Today I will explain about the effect of transaction on accounting equation. So for the effect, there is two effects. One is increase and another one is decrease. So let's look at the effect of transaction on accounting equation. So we have the question 2A Part B Final Examination December 2019. These are the transaction for Azri Trading, which is a stationery store. The owner is Azrin. And below are the transaction for the month of November 2019. So the first transaction is on 1st November. The transaction is started the business with 20,000 cash. Therefore, equity increase. Equity is also known as capital. So the amount of equity is 20,000 increase. And the second effect will be increase in cash because the owner brought in cash as a capital. Therefore, asset increase. In terms of cash, 20,000. Okay, now I want you to look at the accounting equation whereby the formula is asset plus expenses equal to equity plus revenue plus liability. So for the first transaction, the equation will be positive 20,000 in asset equal to positive 20,000 of equity. Therefore, the equation is satisfied. 20,000 equal to 20,000. Okay, for the second transaction on 3rd November, purchase Fuji Xerox printer RM700 by check for office use. Fuji Xerox is the brand name of the printer. Printer is the asset. So, when the business purchase printer, asset increase. So, asset printer increased by 700 ringgit. And the purchase is made by check. Therefore, the amount of bank will decrease. So, decrease in asset bank 700 ringgit. Next, look at the equation. Okay, so for asset, we have positive 700. And another effect is asset negative 700 ringgit. So, positive 700 ringgit plus negative 700 ringgit is equal to 0. So, 0 equal to 0. There is no effect in other accounts. Equity also 0. Revenue 0. Liability 0. Asset now, because we deduct 700 with 700, asset also become 0. Therefore, the equation is satisfied. Next, 13 November, sold good on credit to Rachel, 500 ringgit. So the business can sold goods. Goods mean inventory or stock. Okay, the business can sold goods to the customer using cash basis and credit basis. Okay, if the business is using credit basis, therefore, there is another account named account receivable or debtor. Debtor means a customer that purchase good from the business by using credit basis. So, Rachel is the debtor, also known as account receivable. Therefore, when the business sold good, revenue will increase. So, revenue will increase or sale will increase by 500 ringgit. And then, when the business sold good on credit, therefore, the amount of debtor or asset will increase. Okay, asset is, debtor is also known as account receivable. So, the account receivable here refer to Rachel. So Rachel is the debtor. That Rachel owed the business by 500 ringgit. So increase in asset, which is account receivable, and increase by 500 ringgit in revenue. Therefore, in the equation, we can see that asset positive 500 and that equal to revenue positive 500. Therefore, the equation is balanced, even. It is even. Asset is 500 ringgit, revenue also 500 ringgit. This side also 500 ringgit and another side is also 500 ringgit. Okay. 14. Bank in cash 3,000 ringgit. Therefore, it means that cash is transferred into bank account. Okay, cash is transferred into the bank. Therefore, asset bank will increase by 3,000 ringgit. And at the same time, cash will decrease by 3,000 ringgit. Both bank and cash are asset. So, from the equation, positive 3,000 ringgit and negative 3,000 ringgit. So, it's equal to 0, right? So, 0 in this side and in another side is also 0. Equity, revenue, liability, no effect, right? So, therefore, this is 0 for this side. So, the equation is satisfied. 17. Paid rental of premises amounting to 400 ringgit by cash. Premises mean building. Therefore, when the business paid rental by cash, the amount of asset decrease. So cash decreased by 400 ringgit. And rental is an expense. When expense incurred, the amount for expense is increased. So increase in rent expenses RM 400 ringgit. Therefore, asset decrease negative 400 ringgit, expenses increase positive 400 ringgit. Negative, positive, negative 400 ringgit, positive 400 ringgit. So how much? 0, right? So this side asset and expense equal to 0. And another side, equity, revenue, liability is also 0. Okay? Therefore, the equation is satisfied. 21. Azrin took 800 ringgit from the bank. Therefore, asset decrease. Asset bank decreased by 800 ringgit. And Azrin took 200 ringgit goods. It means that the amount of good previously purchased by the business will be decreased by 200 ringgit. And this asset is taken by Azrin for his personal use. Therefore, the amount of equity will decrease. Okay, so the amount of capital will be decreased to 1,000 ringgit. So how to get 1,000 ringgit? 800 ringgit plus 200 ringgit. So asset negative or decrease to 800 ringgit. Expense also decrease negative 200 ringgit. So negative 800 ringgit plus negative 200 ringgit equal to negative 1,000 ringgit, right? So equal to equity also negative 1,000 ringgit. Therefore, both sides are now even. Okay, so whenever the owner took asset for his personal use, the effect will be the reduction in equity. So this is also called as a drawing. Okay, personal drawing made by the owner. Next, 24. Sales return, also known as return inward, by Rachel. Rachel is the debtor, yeah? As you still remember, okay, Rachel has one transaction with the business on 13 November, whereby the business sold good to Rachel on credit 500 ringgit. Okay, but on 24th, Rachel return back the goods to the business amounted 200 ringgit. Therefore, the effect will be account receivable Rachel will be decreased by 200 ringgit. And also, the next effect is sale for the business or revenue also decrease by 200 ringgit. So decrease in asset, decrease in revenue. Okay, in asset, decrease represented by negative. So the amount is 200 ringgit. Revenue decrease, we represent it by using negative sign, also 200 ringgit. So in this side asset, negative 200 ringgit. Another side revenue also negative 200 ringgit. Therefore, both sides are now equal. Okay, next. 26. The business bought a motor vehicle for 4,500 ringgit cash. So, business bought a motor vehicle. Motor vehicle is asset. Therefore, asset increase 4,500 ringgit. Business bought the asset by using cash. Cash is also asset. So, asset decrease by 4,500 ringgit. So, positive means increase, negative mean decrease. So 4,500 ringgit minus 4,500 ringgit equal to 0 for this side, and for another side equity, revenue, liability are also 0. Therefore, the equation is satisfied. For 28 November, paid utility bill and wages. Utility bill and wages are expenses. Okay, so when expenses are incurred, therefore the amount of expense will increase. So increase in expense, increase in expense for utility and also for wages. Utility amounted to 100 ringgit, wages amounted to 500 ringgit. And the payment of the expenses are made by using cash. Therefore, asset will decrease. So, cash will decrease by 600 ringgit. So 600 ringgit, you add 100 ringgit utility, paid for utility, and another 500 ringgit are paid for wages. So for asset, we have here negative 600 ringgit. Negative because the amount of asset decrease. And then for expense, increase 100 ringgit. So plus 100 ringgit. Increase in wages. So plus the amount is 500 ringgit. So 100 ringgit plus 500 ringgit equal to 600 ringgit. So negative 600 plus 600 ringgit. So the answer is 0. So this side is 0. Now look at the other side. The other side is also 0. Therefore, the equation is satisfied. So for the conclusion, whenever there is a transaction, two accounts affected, it may be both on the same side of the equation or on each side of the equation. It is not a necessity that one on either side is affected. Okay, for example, November 28. The effect is only on this side, not on the other side. Okay. And for second conclusion, each transaction has its effect on the equation, but the equation must always satisfy after every such effect. Okay, so now let's look at November 28. Here we have asset decrease, expenses increase. So these are the effects, but we have to make sure that the effect will make the equation equal. Okay, so if there is a decrease in cash, 600 ringgit, expenses need to be will be increased by the same figure. Therefore, negative 600 ringgit plus 600 ringgit, the amount will become 0 for this side, and for another side, the amount is also 0. So you have to make sure that the effect must follow the equation. Okay, that's all for today. Thank you.